Hello, this is Reverend Dore Jacques Patlian, teaching the science of mind from Sarasota, Florida. Hope you're having a great day today. Today we're going to talk about the ego, and I'm entitling this one, A Great Servant, but a Bad Master. You know, the ego is our sense of self. It's the part of our mind that knows that we are Dore or Susan or Alana. And it's also the part that dies when we do. Its main job is to be chief of security, tasked with overseeing physical self-preservation. We couldn't really get along without our egos. They're what says to us, watch out when we're in danger, or yes, go for it when we have an opportunity. Ego drives the fight or flight instinct and often saves our lives. Our ego is what drives us to succeed, can send us to the depths of a pity party when we fall short. It can make us jealous and mean, but it can also impel us to philanthropy and tremendous selflessness. Our ego is what defines us to us. It is what we consciously know of us. It is the part of our body, as I've said, that dies when we do. The problem with the ego is we can't live without it, but often we feel we can't live with it. The ego is the root of most arguments because Mr. and Mrs. Ego just have to be right. The ego is the cause of most self-destructive behavior, and boy, I know about that in my own life. And it's the cause of most feelings of rebellion, where we just want to rebel without any real reason. But he or she is what kicks us in the butt and says, hey, you can do this. Ego is also what causes us to be the best that we can be and strive to attain a level of true excellence. The greatest performers in any field are almost always people of very strong egos, or they wouldn't be driven to spend their lives in the pursuit of being number one. Anyone who's the best at anything they do will have a strong ego, and that includes the great ministers and pastors of this nation. We think they should be humble, but they couldn't really do their jobs if they were all that humble. A great teacher must have a pretty good opinion of him or herself, or they couldn't get up there every day and put on a transformative performance. The great athlete must strive to be the best every day, or he will be retired to obscurity soon enough. A world-class musician spends 80% of his working time practicing in order to give the best performance ever in the other 20%. To live like this takes drive, pride, and almost compulsive amounts of ego. However, if you want to make your ego your master rather than your servant, you're headed for a pretty bad fall. You see, the ego is blind to real truth because it knows what it knows only through our five senses. It doesn't have any spiritual sense at all. It misses much of what's valuable in the world because of this. The ego's insane because it believes that it's all there is. It denies the very presence of God, usually. A blind and insane being is probably not your best choice for CEO of your life. I believe that the 50% divorce rate in first marriages in the U.S. is mainly due to marrying with the ego and id in charge. The id is where the lust lives in our psyche, and the ego and the id are close partners. The id gets all excited about Miss or Mr. Wonderful and sends urgent messages to the ego saying, I gotta have this. Get it for me now. Ego's the fixer, the arranger in our mental world, so it says, yeah, he or she is hot. That one's for you. Go for it. And the rest is history. The superego, your better self, does not have a chance against this pair. Here's Reverend Dore's prescription for how to handle your ego. Treat Mr. or Mrs. Ego like a very well-loved Doberman Pinscher or a Rottweiler. Feed it often, care for it, love it, and then chain it up when it's not needed. Never put it in charge. Disaster follows whenever ego leads. But when ego serves, things return to harmony and success follows. Is ego a bad thing? No, ego, like all things, was designed and built by God for a specific set of tasks. It's when we decide to put ego in a role for which it is not well suited that we muck up the divine system and trouble's on the way. Ego was never intended to run our lives, only to motivate our lives and preserve them. Making the ego the CEO of your life is a bit like appointing the night watchman as president of the company. The real CEO of your life is God working through you, through your higher self, the superego in Freud's world. This is where your higher values, your conscience, your best self lives. That is your CEO, because that's the God within you. Remember this and you'll be fine. Next week, watch out for compassion. We're going to do that one next. Check out the podcast blog on YouTube/RevDore in just a few days. Until then, may God bless and keep you and be with you always. And so it is.